Hello and welcome to the real estate market analysis for Almaden Valley, California, where we take an in-depth look at all of the numbers for July of 2009. Now this presentation is sponsored by my company, Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services, and my name is Robert Whitelaw, and I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of California. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors and a certified ePro, and the president and CEO of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how to get in contact with me. If you'd like to visit my website, you can find that at www.soldbyrobert.com. If you'd like to contact me via email, you can send those to robert@soldbyrobert.com. If you prefer to call me directly, just dial 408-852-0525. And if you prefer to talk online using any of the popular instant messaging programs, you can get me through AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, or Yahoo IM using the screen name The Rebel Broker. And if you're a Skype user, just enter Rebel Broker to start chatting with me. Now finally, referrals are always appreciated. If you or anyone you know is interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate in Silicon Valley, please feel free to get in touch with me. I'll be happy to help you in any way I can. And if you're interested in a referral for an agent anywhere in the United States, I can go through the process of finding the agent perfect for you. So whether you're in my area or all the way across the country, I can find the perfect agent for you. Now let's go ahead and jump into the numbers for July of 2009 for Almaden Valley. The first thing we'll be taking a look at will be those inventory numbers. Things are still a little bit higher in Almaden Valley than in previous years, although things have tended to really slow down as far as how fast that inventory is growing. Inventory is up 3.31%. That's 4 more houses in the inventory in 2009 than at the same time in 2008. So that's actually relatively good news. I mean, if you look at that increase from 2007 to 2008, that was pretty dramatic. And luckily we just didn't see that dramatic increase continued in 2009. Now right now we have a grand total of 125 homes currently on the market, and we'll see how things move as we move further into the year, but that's actually a good trend that we're seeing, that things are stabilizing. If you look at some other numbers for the county in general, this isn't performing quite as well as other areas where we've actually seen inventories decrease, but at least this is an encouraging sign that things might be heading in the right direction for Almaden Valley. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the new listings. Now these are the homes that have been listed during the month of July, looking all the way back to 1999. You can see that we've actually had a decline this year when compared to the same time last year. That's good news. New listings are down 7.41%. That's 4 fewer homes listed than at the same time last year, giving us a grand total of 50 homes that were listed in the month of July in Almaden Valley. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what we're all really interested in, the sales. How are we doing there? Well, as you can see, we've had some pretty good news for Almaden Valley for this month. A lot of increase in sales from last year. In fact, sales are up 41.38% from July of 2008 to July of 2009 for Almaden Valley, and that's exceptionally good news. That was 12 more homes sold this year than the same time last year, for a grand total of 41 homes sold total. Now that gives us that gives us an aggressive place to start with decreasing that inventory. I'm sure it had a lot played into the decrease in the inventory, and since we're also seeing the new homes listed number starting to decline a little bit, I think we'll start to see that inventory number get even better. Now, one ratio I like to pay attention to, because oftentimes you can't get the whole story just from looking at inventory numbers from a year-to-year basis, is the ratio between the homes that are sold and the homes that are currently in inventory. And right now that stands at 3.04, and there are 2 ways to look at that number. The first way is months of inventory. It tells us how long it would take to sell off every home currently in inventory if the sales numbers froze where they are. So at 3.04, that means it would take us a little over 3 months to sell every home currently in inventory in Almaden Valley. That is actually a very good number. Now, despite the fact we haven't seen the decrease in inventory on a year-to-year basis as the county in general has or other communities have, this 3.04 number is actually better than most other areas in the county, and indicates what I would consider to be a healthy level of competition for buyers and sellers here. Another way to think of this is a competition index. So if you're a seller trying to get your home sold, this number basically tells you how many homes you're competing with for each sale. So right now, for every home that sells, about 3 homes are on the market. Now that's pretty healthy. That's a good place to be. I consider that number to be fairly balanced, and by that I mean buyers don't have to rush out and make an offer on every single home they find. They've got several homes to choose from at any given time. Sellers are getting enough attention on their properties that they can expect to sell their home in a reasonable period of time. So that's actually pretty healthy. So as far as just a healthy market goes, I actually think that Almaden Valley is in a pretty good position. Now this is also an improvement from last month, from last month's ratio, which stood at 4.24. So it's definitely heading in the right direction. It should be very encouraging for folks that are in the Almaden Valley market right now. Now let's go ahead and take a look at these same numbers. This time we will just look over past months. So instead of just looking at the month of July going all the way back to 1999, we're going to look straight back chronologically to February of 2008, month to month, and see what sort of trends we can determine here and see if these trends will inform us on where the market's going. Now again, we're looking at inventory numbers, and we can see that overall the inventory numbers do show an increase. Now there's been quite a bit of fluctuation, and this is one of those graphs where you need to sort of mentally compensate for seasonal changes. You can see there, you see your lowest points typically in the wintertime, so in December of 2008. You can see we hit our bottom in inventory, and that's normal. Most folks take their home off of the market for the November and December months to take advantage of the holiday season. It's Christmas time, it's Thanksgiving. They don't want to have to worry about showing their properties during those times. And then we start to see folks ramping right back up in January, February, and March as we start to head into what's typically considered the selling season of the summer. Now, if you take a look at the change just month to month, just June to July of 2009, you can see that the inventory is up 1.63%. That's 2 more homes on the market in July than in June, so not a dramatic increase. But again, if we look to last year, we're sort of seeing a different dynamic here. Now, June of last year, we saw a drop between June and July, and this year we're seeing an increase. Usually we would expect to see a little bit of a decrease as sales tend to increase in July. We're not seeing that, so this is a little bit out of seasonal characteristic for it to go up at this point, but not so much that I think it's something we need to be very concerned about. Since we're not really following in with what happened last year, I mean, if you look at April and then May and then June and July of last year, we're really sort of performing differently. Things were relatively flat with things increasing up into June and July, whereas in last year things were sort of flat with a little increase in June and July. This year we saw things at sort of a higher level and then coming down in June and July. So we'll see how that plays out for us in the market as we move forward. Again, I don't think that we're seeing necessarily a trend here. I think that we just don't have enough numbers here to really represent the market, but I don't think that what we're seeing is a trend to indicate that we're going to see a continuing increase in inventory. I don't think the numbers point that direction. Now, if we look at the number of homes that were listed, we can see that's been relatively flat over the course of the period we have here, going all the way back to February of 2008. Now, the inventory, number of homes listed is actually up 16.28% when compared to June. That's actually fairly normal. We expect usually to see in the summer months, usually it's a little earlier than July, but usually in May, June, July, we start to see a little bit of an increase. Last year we saw that. Last year we saw a steady ramping up, February, March, April of inventory. This year we sort of saw the opposite. We had a whole lot of homes listed earlier on. I think that's actually normal given the current situation with how properties are being handled and what's going on with foreclosures and short sales. I think seeing a big bulge in listings earlier in the season is normal. There's some folks who've got to get these properties sold. They don't want to wait around. They got to get them out there as early as possible. So instead of sort of seeing a steady ramp up into the summer months, we saw a big ramp early on, which sort of bottomed out in May and June, and now we're starting to see things go up just a little bit. As far as sales are concerned, steady ramping up since January. Pretty impressive numbers. Obviously better performance than last year. The same kind of trend as we saw last year, building up to July, but this year obviously is much more of a robust build-up in sales. I think that's really something we can be encouraged about. In fact, just between June and July, we saw sales increase 41.38%. That's 12 more homes sold in July than in June of this year. So that's also good news. The sales numbers are really the big ones. And anything else that might contribute to increased inventory would be a concern, but we're not seeing that anymore. It was different a little bit earlier in the year. Where will we go? Can we draw any conclusions based on these numbers? Well, we're not really seeing the performance on the same lines as we saw last year. There's a different paradigm going on this year as far as the foreclosures and short sales are concerned. They're definitely bulging our inventory numbers a bit here. Or perhaps just people thinking this is their last opportunity, or anticipating that the market's going to go down further. These numbers may not just be short sales and foreclosures. We'll check that number out here in a minute. But it's interesting to note that we've had that big bulge in February, March, April of listings as we moved into the year. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the short sale and foreclosure numbers. Now, right now we're seeing conventional sales are 90% of the marketplace, which is pretty amazing. Most other areas are not seeing this sort of conventional activity. It's usually more in the neighborhood of 60% conventional, sometimes half the market is only conventional. So what does that tell us about the numbers we just talked about? It tells us that the fact that lots of things are being listed, they aren't short sales, they aren't foreclosures. So I think it's the other side of that coin that we talked about a minute ago. I believe what we've got are sellers who might be in a situation where they're thinking that we need to sell now before the market gets worse. Where it may be folks who are putting their homes up, maybe because of the jobs numbers that we've seen. It could be that situation where folks are just really concerned about the economy, or are in a position where they think they're going to have trouble in the future, and they're trying to avoid short sale and foreclosure by selling now. There's no real research into what's causing that. My personal feeling after looking at houses and talking to sellers is that it's really just folks concerned about the market coming up the road, what it's going to be like next year and the year after that. I'm not seeing a lot of optimism in the market in Almaden Valley as far as folks thinking that there's going to be this great recovery and things are going to get a lot better. A lot of folks are seeing that even though the markets are down now, this may be their best chance to get a higher price than they're going to be able to get anytime in the next 2 years. Now, if we compare that to last month, you can see that it's really kind of on par. Last month we just didn't have any short sales. It was dominated entirely by foreclosures as far as the percentage that weren't conventional, but it was still 90% conventional. And that overall, I think, should assuage a lot of the fears of folks who are in Almaden Valley. Almaden Valley is really one of the most healthy areas when it comes to conventional sales dominating the marketplace, which basically means a lot of folks aren't having to worry about the processes and procedures that are hovering around short sale and foreclosure deals. And Almaden Valley is still a very popular place. I talk to folks all the time who are interested in properties in Almaden Valley. In fact, there's a lot of crossover between folks who are looking in my area where I live, of Morgan Hill and San Martin, and Almaden Valley, because a lot of these folks are looking for homes with more land to them. And those are really two communities that do offer properties with acreage in a lot of cases. So I end up talking to folks, interestingly enough, that are looking in both of those areas. Okay, let's take a look at those home prices. Of course, everyone wants to know where those are going. We actually have more down numbers at this time compared to last year. That's pretty normal. There have been recoveries for prices in some areas, stabilization. We've seen pretty steady decline since 2007. It's not, in fact, not a slowing of that rate of decline, really a fairly regular rate of decline. The average home price was down 12.6%. That was a dollar change of $137,971 from the same time last year. And those are really what I think is contributing to some of the robust sales. Folks are finally, because you know why the inventory isn't down as much as it could be, or sales aren't even better. A lot of folks don't see Almaden Valley as a primo place to go to get those short sales and foreclosures. And those have been the properties that people have been most attracted to because they perceive those as being the best deals. But because of what Almaden Valley has to offer, we've seen sales still continuing to be robust, and I think we'll continue to see that as short sales and foreclosures continue to prove themselves to be difficult transactions to get through, and frankly show themselves to be no better of a deal once everything is said and done if you're good at negotiating on the front end on a conventional purchase. Now, the average home price was $956,912. That was quite a bit over the average for the county, which I believe was right around $700,000. If we take a look at the median, sort of give us an idea of where the distribution is, we can see that's really about the same. The volume of homes that were sold tended to be a little bit under the average price, but not so much so to be anything that would be worrisome. The median price change was down 10.73%. That was a dollar change of $110,000. The median price stood at $915,000, and what that basically tells us is half the homes that sold were priced above $915,000, and half the homes that sold were priced below $915,000. Now, the highest priced single-family residential home that sold was at 986 Woodview Place. That sold for $1,832,000. Its list price was $2,275,000, and it was on the market for 105 days. That home was last sold in November of 2003 for $1,725,000. So that person actually was able to sell it for a little bit more than they had purchased it for. But the issue there is there were quite a few improvements put into that property. So I would guess that once everything is said and done, that person actually didn't make back quite as much as they probably would have liked in that case. Now let's go ahead and take, now that we'll do the, let's go ahead and go back quickly here and look at the lowest priced home. Now the lowest priced home was at 988 Ivory Creek Drive in San Jose. That sold for $585,000. Its list price was $620,000, and that was on the market for 1 day, so that sucker went quick. It last sold on 5/2004 for $539,000. The average price per square foot was $411.14. Last month's average price per square foot was $412.24. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at home prices just going straight back across the calendar here. Those numbers we were looking at were just for the month of July, going back to 1999 on home prices. Now again, we're looking back to February of 2008, so we can get an idea of what these prices are doing. Now seasonal influences play into this. You'll see dips, but also simply activity can play into this number. So a lot of times you need to look at the average price number as much as an indicator of where activity has been at different price ranges as an average price. So for instance, sometimes you'll see these big jumps, these uncharacteristic jumps, for instance in November of 2008, and usually those can be explained by just a couple of very high-end priced priced homes selling in a single month, simply because we don't get a huge volume of homes selling on a regular basis. So one very high-end home selling can sometimes skew this number up a little bit. But in general, it's no doubt that we are seeing a decline in the average price. We've seen a little bit of recovery, steady recovery really, since April of 2009. Now, as I mentioned, the average price was $956,912. The percentage price change from June to July was an increase of 3.85%. That was a $35,466 change in the average price. Now, does this mean the home you have listed for the last 6 months should be increased in price by 3.85%? No. What it means is we're probably just simply seeing folks coming out, and more homes at the higher end are being purchased. So that higher end activity is increasing the average price of what's getting sold. Now the median price, let's see where that rests again in comparison. Now see, here's a really good example of what I was talking about understanding the difference here between the average and the median price, being able to explain some things. Now last month in June, you can see there was quite a disparity between the average price and the median price. What that would tell you is we probably had a couple of homes, 1 or 2 homes that were very high priced sell in June, because last month the vast majority of homes that sold were below the average price. Now this month the median price change was up 17.31%. That was a $135,000 increase. The total homes that sold were 41. And again, just one very high-end home selling can tend to skew those numbers, so you need to keep those in mind. Now, if you're interested in getting specific data on any of the sub areas within Almaden Valley, if you're interested in Almaden Valley, get in contact with me. I'd be happy to set you up with some very specific information on properties that would meet your needs. Let's go ahead and take a look at the days to sell, and this is again in past years. So we're going to look back to 1999, same month of July all the way through. Let's see how long it's been taking to get homes sold. Now you can see we've had a steady ramp up in how long it takes to get a home sold from 2005 up to 2009. It's up 30.91%. That's 17 more days to get a home sold in July of 2009 than it took in July of 2008. As far as the homes that did sell, the lowest days on market in July for Almaden Valley was 0, which basically means that a home sold before it was ever listed, it was sold before it ever got entered into the multiple listing service. Sometimes what you'll see happening with those properties is those were held as pocket listings, which means that for whatever reason the person who wanted to sell their property did not want it in the multiple listing service and was having it sold strictly through the office that was listing it. You'll sometimes see that with very high-end properties. I know back in the early 90s when I was working in an office that sort of specialized in those types of properties, many of those never got into the multiple listing service because we did a different, it's a different kind of marketing to properties that are just way above a typical price range. Now let's see, the homes sold before the MLS listings was 1. Homes on the market for 1 to 7 days, there were 4 of those. Homes sold in 8 to 30 days, there were 10 of those. Let's see, 16 homes sold in 31 to 90 days, 7 homes sold in 91 to 180 days, and 3 homes sold in over 180 days. Now, 36.5% of the homes that sold did so in 30 days or less, so that's pretty good, over a third. And last month, 45% of the homes that sold in 30 days or less. So that's kind of calibrates you. So much of this depends on how your home is marketed and what's being done to get the information about your property in front of potential buyers, and really whether or not your home is priced appropriately for the price range that it's in. And really you need to put on the hat of a buyer and the competition to sort of get an idea of whether or not you're competitive with other properties in the marketplace. Now, if we go ahead and look at the same information, but just over past month, let's see if we can get any good insights with that. It's been sort of a steady increase. You can see that the days on market really increased as we headed into winter in 2008 and 2009. You tend to see the days on market going up at those times. And sometimes you'll see a big jump like we did in January of 09, and oftentimes that will simply be because you have one property that's been on the market for perhaps a year or more, over 365 days, that skews those numbers again up a bit. But you'll also notice oftentimes that you'll see an increase in the average days on market in the same months where you have dramatic increases in sales. Now you'll see we had a pretty big increase between June and July. 54 to 72 is a pretty big increase. A lot of that has to do with the fact we saw such a dramatic increase, over a 40% increase in sales. The reason is you're selling off stock that's been on the market longer. So you're seeing these numbers. Remember, this is only about homes that are sold, not homes that are still on the market. Just the homes that sold took 72 days to get sold. And some of those properties had been on the market for longer. We did more selling in the month of July, so we reached deeper into the inventory to take properties out that had perhaps been on there longer than many others. The change in the days to sell from June to July was an increase of 33.33%. That was an increase of 18 days, taking us up to 72 days. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the locations of these. I often like to just take a bird's eye view of the properties that have sold in Almaden Valley, just to see if we're seeing any strange trends. Are we seeing a lot of homes in one area grouped for sales for one reason or another? We usually see the number of homes at the far southwest, eastern end of Almaden Valley. It tends to dwindle a little bit the further down you get, simply because a lot of folks are concerned about their commute, and with Almaden Expressway really being one of the main ways to get out, some folks don't want to head down further. You can see we didn't get anything further south of, say, the McKean area, and that's pretty normal. Stuff down further deep into New Almaden tends to be a little bit more of a challenge. And then you can see, of course, in those southern areas, it really sort of dies off. But really a good spread, frankly, of homes that have sold in Almaden Valley. Well, that concludes this month's report for Almaden Valley for July. I'll go ahead and put my information for you to get in contact with me up again, just in case anyone would like to get in touch. I'd appreciate hearing from you. It doesn't necessarily have to be about whether or not you want to buy or sell real estate. If you have any comments about this presentation, or there's other information you'd like to see included, please feel free to get in touch with me. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I have to say on these presentations, and I look forward to talking to you next time.